Life often confronts us with the stark reality that relationships are temporary. People enter and exit our lives, sometimes as a whirlwind, leaving profound imprints, and other times as a slow drift, their presence gradually fading into the backdrop. We build connections, foster bonds, and often entwine our emotions with those relationships, believing in their permanence. Yet this belief is an illusion. What happens when those connections fray, unraveling like the threads of a cherished fabric? How do we cope when someone we value no longer holds the same place in our lives? Or worse, when we realize they never shared the same depth of emotional investment, leaving us grappling with a sense of unreciprocated vulnerability. The emotional toll of such moments can feel immense, as if pieces of ourselves are being torn away. The questions that often arise in these times: how do I stop caring? Or can I detach without losing a part of who I am? Are not just cries for relief, but reflections of the human desire to find equilibrium amidst chaos. This is where the wisdom of Stoicism, particularly through the teachings of Marcus Aurelius, becomes a guiding light. The Stoics were not advocates of cold detachment, but masters of navigating the stormy seas of human emotions with purpose and clarity. They understood that the key to emotional resilience lies not in suppressing feelings, but in acknowledging them, reframing their impact, and finding stability within ourselves. Emotional detachment, from their perspective, isn't about apathy or indifference. It's about reclaiming the power to act from a place of strength and inner peace, free from the turmoil of external dependencies. Rule 1: embrace life's transience. Marcus Aurelius observed, "Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth." This profound insight speaks directly to the way we approach emotional attachments. Too often we entrench ourselves in our personal narratives about the importance of a relationship, creating stories about its permanence or irreplaceability. Yet, life repeatedly demonstrates that no connection is eternal. Relationships are dynamic; they flourish and fade, shaped by circumstances such as geographical separation, the inevitability of mortality, or the slow drift of emotional disconnect. To truly attain emotional freedom, we must embrace this impermanence as a fundamental truth. Imagine standing at the shoreline, a handful of sand in your palm. The harder you grip it, the more rapidly it slips away, leaving your hand empty. Relationships are no different. The tighter we cling, trying to control their course or preserve them in their idealized state, the more likely we are to accelerate their natural dissolution. Clinging often arises from fear of loneliness, change, or the unknown, but paradoxically, this very attachment can suffocate the bond we wish to protect. In my own life, I experienced this truth through a decade-long friendship that at its height felt unshakable. We were confidants, sharing our deepest aspirations, insecurities, and late-night musings. Yet as the years passed, the connection grew strained. Conversations became sporadic, interests diverged, and the mutual support that once defined our bond dissipated. Despite my efforts to rekindle the closeness, I realized I was clinging to a version of our friendship that no longer existed. My emotional investment became a burden, a chain that tied me to the past while reality moved on. Ultimately, it was the Stoic wisdom of Marcus Aurelius that guided me toward peace. Recognize the end, and you will suffer less. Accepting that the friendship had reached its natural conclusion wasn't easy, but it was liberating. It allowed me to release the weight of unmet expectations and appreciate the value the relationship once held without forcing it to remain unchanged. Embracing impermanence is not about giving up, it's about finding balance between holding on and letting go, and in doing so, discovering a deeper sense of inner harmony. Rule 2: govern your emotions with reason. It's a common belief that emotions have a mind of their own. Pain, sadness, and anger can feel like forces beyond our control, especially when we're deeply attached to someone. These emotions can grip us unexpectedly, altering our behavior and even clouding our judgment. Yet Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic philosopher, argued that emotions are not uncontrollable forces; they are the byproducts of our thoughts, beliefs, and interpretations of the world around us. Emotions don't act independently; they are shaped by the mental stories we tell ourselves. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This powerful reminder teaches us that our emotional responses are within our control, even when external circumstances feel overwhelming. To emotionally detach, the key is to recognize that our thoughts, not the events themselves, create our emotional turmoil. Imagine going through a breakup. The initial reaction is often a whirlwind of questions. Did I say something wrong? Why did this happen? Could I have done more? These thoughts, while natural, can spiral into self-criticism and emotional distress. Rather than allowing these thoughts to dictate your emotional state, the Stoic approach calls for a shift in focus. Instead of endlessly replaying conversations and overanalyzing every detail, replace emotional overanalysis with rational inquiry. Ask yourself, what are the facts here? What is the reality of the situation? How can I view this from a more objective perspective? For instance, if someone doesn't reply to a heartfelt message, the initial emotional reaction might be to spiral into self-doubt, frustration, or anger. The mind may jump to conclusions, wondering if you've done something wrong or if they no longer care about you. But the Stoic wisdom teaches us to pause and step back. By focusing on the facts, like the simple truth that they haven't responded yet, you can challenge your assumptions. Silence doesn't necessarily equate to rejection. There could be countless reasons for the delay, none of which involve a personal slight. By choosing to examine the situation logically, you regain control over your emotional state, breaking free from the grip of automatic, distressing thoughts. This practice allows you to detach from the emotional storm and approach the situation with clarity and peace of mind. Rule 3: Rehearse loss with negative visualization. At first, imagining the loss of someone you care about may seem counterproductive, even unsettling. Why would anyone voluntarily confront the possibility of losing a loved one, a friend, or a partner? But Stoics like Marcus Aurelius believe that this very exercise is a crucial tool for building emotional resilience. By deliberately picturing the loss of someone important, we allow ourselves to process the pain and uncertainty ahead of time. This practice doesn't numb the grief but helps us accept it in advance, reducing its overwhelming impact when it inevitably arrives. I personally experienced the power of this Stoic exercise when a close friend, someone I had shared countless moments with over the years, began discussing plans to move overseas. Initially, the thought of them leaving was unbearable, but instead of resisting that fear, I leaned into it. Each day, I took a few quiet moments to imagine my life without them, what my days would look like, how I'd fill the space left behind, and how I might cope with their absence. It wasn't an easy mental shift, and at first it felt like I was only making the impending loss more real. Yet through this process, I found myself emotionally preparing, accepting that their departure was a possibility, not a certainty, and that I could still find peace, even in their absence. When they finally moved, the emotional weight of their departure didn't hit me as hard as I had feared. I had already mourned the future I'd imagined, and as a result, the grief felt manageable. This exercise wasn't about detaching from my feelings or becoming cold. It was about learning how to hold space for both the present and the future. I could still appreciate the time we had shared, but I had also prepared myself for the change, making the transition smoother and less emotionally jarring. Marcus Aurelius, too, cautioned against letting our minds become overwhelmed by imagined futures. He urged, "Do not disturb yourself by imagining all of life's troubles at once. Meet each calmly as it arises." This wisdom underscores the core of negative visualization. The goal isn't to dwell in negativity, but rather to gently prepare for the inevitable. The more we practice this emotional flexibility, the more we can face each change with greater clarity, courage, and a sense of control over how we respond. Rule 4: Focus on what you can control. So much of our pain stems from trying to control the uncontrollable, and this struggle often blinds us to our true source of power. Marcus Aurelius profoundly emphasized this distinction. Our thoughts, actions, and responses are within our control, everything else is not. The wisdom here lies in recognizing that our emotional turmoil often arises from fixating on external factors, other people's feelings, behaviors, and responses, things that lie beyond our influence. When we try to control someone else's emotions or actions, we unknowingly surrender our peace to circumstances outside our control. When you care deeply for someone, the desire to shape their feelings is almost instinctual. You may find yourself overanalyzing every interaction, every word spoken, and every action taken, hoping to influence their emotional state. But the hard truth is that, despite your best efforts, you cannot dictate another person's feelings or make them see things from your perspective. The only realm where your influence holds true is within your own emotional world, how you choose to respond, what meaning you assign to events, and how you handle the ebb and flow of your own emotions. I recall a time when I was in a relationship that seemed to be slowly fading. I spent countless hours trying to win back affection, sending messages, planning dates, and adjusting my behavior, hoping that it would reignite the spark. But despite all my efforts, things didn't change. It was only when I shifted my focus, when I let go of trying to control the outcome and began to prioritize my own emotional well-being, that relief finally came. I realized that the peace I sought wasn't contingent on winning someone else's affection, but in reclaiming control over my own emotional state. This was when I discovered the power of emotional autonomy, the freedom to be at peace regardless of external circumstances. In detaching emotionally, I wasn't rejecting the person or the relationship. I was accepting the reality that my happiness had to come from within. It was a form of self-liberation, a realization that my emotions, my peace, and my sense of self-worth were mine to cultivate, independent of anyone else's actions. Rule 5: adopt a broader perspective. When consumed by emotional turmoil, it's easy to lose sight of the broader context of your life. In these moments, it's essential to remember Marcus Aurelius' wisdom, which constantly reminds us of the fleeting nature of our personal struggles in the grand timeline of existence. He often reflected on how our troubles, however intense, are ultimately small and transient when viewed through the lens of eternity. When caught up in the pain of loss or heartbreak, we may feel as though the present moment defines us, yet it's helpful to pause and ask, will this matter in 5 years, or does this truly define my life? The truth is that relationships, though deeply significant, are just one chapter in the broader narrative of who we are. They are part of our journey, but not the entire story. Understanding this dynamic allows you to emotionally detach, not by withdrawing or diminishing your feelings, but by cultivating a sense of perspective, recognizing that while this chapter is painful, it doesn't determine the direction of your entire book. I remember facing the crushing weight of a breakup, where, in the depth of my grief, I felt as though my entire future was uncertain. But as I practiced this reflective approach, I began to zoom out. The relationship, while meaningful, wasn't the sum of my existence. Life continued to unfold, introducing me to new people, opportunities, and experiences that I would never have encountered if I'd stayed trapped in that single moment of loss. This shift in perspective didn't lessen the importance of the relationship, but it allowed me to see that there was much more to my journey ahead, filled with growth and possibility. This understanding brought me not just comfort, but a profound sense of freedom, knowing that life's path is far greater than any one relationship. Emotional detachment, when practiced through Stoic principles, is not about retreating into indifference or coldness. Rather, it is about fostering clarity, inner peace, and resilience in the face of life's inevitable ups and downs. By accepting the impermanence of all things, relationships, situations, and even emotions, you shift your focus away from the fleeting nature of life and towards the enduring strength within you. The Stoic practice teaches that our thoughts are not merely reactive, but can be intentionally shaped. By mastering your inner dialogue, you can recognize that emotional turmoil often arises not from the events themselves, but from the way you interpret them. This allows you to regain control over your emotional responses rather than letting them dictate your state of being. When you focus on what you can control, your actions, your reactions, and the meaning you assign to your experiences, you begin to cultivate a sense of autonomy over your emotions. This isn't about denying your feelings, but about not allowing them to rule your life or define your happiness. Life will continue to bring change, whether it's through personal losses, shifting relationships, or unforeseen challenges. Yet with the wisdom of the Stoics, you can face these transitions with greater strength and grace, navigating the tides of emotion without being swept away by them. The next time you feel emotionally overwhelmed, pause and reflect, am I controlling my emotions, or are they controlling me? In this simple question lies the key to emotional freedom. The path to this freedom is found in the ability to let go not of your humanity or your capacity to care, but of the emotional attachments that bind you to transient things. Only through this release can you achieve true emotional liberation, stepping into a life of calm, purpose, and unshakable resilience.